gonna make this one relatively short. I've been seeing a lot of what's the right word for them? Like, normal people YouTube videos. Not low views or whatever, but well, I mean, obviously they will, but just normal people YouTube. The other day, I'd seen one on some guy in his library, and I mean that's not really normal, is it? And I'd sort of looked around my room, and I realized I had an aesthetic, obviously, but and the point of this video is no way to like dog on this guy. Obviously, he's old. Obviously, he's old, so he's had the work and the money, and that's why he has a library in his fucking basement. It's not been a minute. That's obviously the reason why. And I looked around and I'm like, okay, I got a couple of bookshelves, but I don't have this like beautifully oak setup, where like books everywhere and lights and things just so, oh, but it brought to my attention the reasons for like doing stuff. And I wrote it on my hand, right? I said it yesterday to a couple of friends, and just to say the whole point, right, is don't be performative, perform. And in that way, even I think those connotations, especially now, make it more negative than what I want it to be. Don't be performative. Performative, the culture we live, where that word, really, what that word instigates now with like, oh, the matcha, the shit, that, like, and then it's just really assumptive, like it assumes every person's actions are false. And then perform also has, I think, a negative connotation because it's like perform regardless of how you feel. The sort of Andrew Tate hasn't been around for a while now, but that whole aspect of the manosphere and all that sort of crap. Yeah. So it's like they have both negative connotations, but that's not the point. To be performative, I think, in this context, what I mean is to say rather than do. And if I'll just politely show off for a minute, this is what I see right now. That's what I'm looking at. And this is sort of like a show off thing, because fucking hell, why are there so many books? Also, shout out to the Batman. I realized a while ago as I was reading Mountains of Madness, I had a Cthulhu statue I chucked out because I was going through like a kooky religious phase. Even though now if I still had it, I'd still look at it and I'd think, damn, it's kind of idolatrous, But yeah, I wouldn't care so much because I'd just be like, well, it's a bit of metal, right? And I miss it. I miss it. Even though it's a bit of a hefty looking golden calf or statue, it still would be cool to have with like the book, and I think even in the photo there's another one of the Lovecrafts. And my idea, why is there a picture of my mom? Oh, the christening. But the point here is, like, if you take a look at all these books, my bad, all of these on this side here, I have to go through all of these maybe by the end of May, right? That's the goal. That's the goal. Right now, I feel like a piece of shit, by the way. I read this morning. I got like maybe 6 pages left of this. I want to read them now, really. I can't be bothered to just wait. But I got about 6 pages left of this. I don't know why I stopped. But idea being, all of these have to get down by a certain point, right? But then I've got all of these. For the love of God, please let me eat it! But I can't, because I have to get through all those. And I'm not that type of guy who reads multiple at once, it's about taking them down one by one by one. And it might not take too long, but it's about burying myself in these books, which I can't wait to get these journals done. These journals and these stupid like. I'm not to say nothing on it, but like this, I'm not. I don't. It's not necessary that I read these. I just for some reason feel like it. I don't know why. You know, do it. I guess right. Just read. I'm such an intelligent man. You know, such an intelligent young man. I think the idea is to remind myself I felt like crap. Somebody did a comment on the last video of God loves you. Like I bloody well hope so. I feel like crap right now, and I felt like crap for a while. Um, I'll be honest with you, it's been a time of struggle. You know, I remember I put a video up which was really just me ranting for a bit, and I didn't want to rant too much, so it's one of the shorter videos. But you know, typically in my life, I do well for a while, then I do bad for a while, then I do well for a while, and I do bad for a while, and it's just how it goes. I'm in the middle of the bad, and for some reason I can't get out of it. I mean, I feel a little bit better now, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And I want to say that, right? Like, it's not really about not mattering how you feel. It's about how you feel and how important it is. You know. Um, I'm a big I'm a big proponent, a big pusher, a big lover of feeling stuff, right? Uh, every time I interact with people, you know, in this day and age, there's a lot of words that have a lot to do with logic, reason, and all sorts of bullshit, right? Of like, I and it comes sometimes from this like really preppy preachy area, you know, of like, you know, if your dad's dead, listen to reason. What? You know, I I think that your feelings are like always valid. Not that they're right, but they're always valid, right? Even in a world with or without a God, the way that I can see this now, maybe I'll grow and look back on this and think, ah, you fool, you know, you got locked in like Spock. We all have feelings, we all have emotions, and I think for you to push them down, they'll only come back up, right? But to acknowledge them, you really have to acknowledge them. Like right now, I'm depressed. I feel like crap. I feel very unmotivated, and my self worth is like down the gutter, you know. And for me to just push that down and try to push on with some, I don't know. I feel like that level of pushing forward, you know, oh, I don't care about my feelings. In a way, it actually, I think it's from a feeling, and I think it's largely from some prideful thought, you know, of hot shit, hot shit, hot shit. Whereas I think it's just important to remember that you are gonna feel stuff. You are gonna feel stuff, and no matter what you feel, the presence of the books on this desk, the presence of all the things in my room, is contrary to what I feel. Right? It's not low self worth. It's not bad. It's not negative. All these things that I'm around is all positive. It's all things that are worth stuff and mean stuff. And there's a level of which you need to acknowledge that, right? You don't need to acknowledge it too much, and then your feelings. You don't need to acknowledge them too much, and sort of go into some pit of despair. Yeah, go on a drive by Goonicide. You don't need to do that, but to acknowledge them and to just be fair with yourself, right? Um, Maybe this is coming from a place. It's so complex because people feel so many different things, even in person to person. I feel like it's largely an American attitude to sort of, well, not even American. But you get what I mean, right? Like this whole push it down and just do it because the man says. Which I feel that attitude might be patriarchal, which might be a kooky religious thing, which might be um, something or another, a reason to which why people don't really connect with religions. Because it seems like even in the Abrahamics, right? And it might be an American thing, it might be a social media thing, who knows? Because recently I've seen a lot of connection with, what Muslims, Christians, Jews. They all have funny things with money, right? They all have funny things with money. Um, Maybe not those in their native lands, but like the Muslims in the UK, the Christians in the UK, in America, and the Jews and stuff. It all seems to be a big push between like always constant growth and gain and forgetting your feelings. And I find that a scary thing because for myself, I don't really care too much about what I gain monetarily. You could argue that knowledge is monetary, but the only thing I really try to gain is the skill of the craft, right? That's all I really try or want to try to go into. So it seems a bit fearful that it's such an important thing, and it might not be the important, but because it's such a constant reoccurrence that this idea of pushing one's feelings down in order to serve a monetary gain or to serve a gain in which sometimes I can't understand. It feels disingenuous to being a person, disingenuous. But then again, I don't know that situation. I don't know that feeling. It might just be something that I'm perceiving. Uh, but the point being, I don't think it's ever healthy whatsoever to push your feelings down or to try and be hot shit or to try and be a gangster. I could really, really happily push all my feelings down to just do some stuff, you know, to just do some stuff. But those things on good for us, those things on the craft, and I fear that because of that's my perspective, maybe that's the way I'm perceiving it, but you get my point. I don't want to push myself down to do things because it doesn't seem like they ever really have a positive effect. What I do want to do is to acknowledge them and to be fair with myself and say that it's a difficult time, but I don't want to be that guy who has all these things in his house, all these books, and has never read a single one of them, you know? All these like journals and stuff, but I don't write all these ideas in my head about stories that I just don't participate in, and like yesterday I had multiple ideas for stories, which, really annoyed me with the idea that I could possibly not do them. Like, we had a thing in class where we had to write a poem, or it's not a poem, a description from the perspective of something that's inhuman. And we looked at it, I looked at it, it's just charcoal. And it was like almost ridiculous, it was like, what the hell am I writing right now? And then we had to write some sort of semi-academic piece of writing which wasn't academic at all. It was the narrator, right? The narrator was some sort of semi-academic, some writing something on what we had just wrote, and it felt fun to me because the Yeti story, I felt like writing the coalition, and I felt like I was able to expand the world for a minute, and that was really fun. Just simple beats in writing, being able to create a world, and it was really fun to take this perspective of some sort of like military man in the coalition at the same time as the Yeti story was taking place, and write him in his perspective of the reasons to why they had burnt this particular piece of work and why they had burned the author as well alive. Fun. It was something akin to the Nazi burning, the books. And I thought, wow, that's fun. It's almost like I could go ahead, and it came really from like an inspiration of Pale Fire, right? Pale Fire and Erasure, those two books, bangers. And it was like, yeah, go for it. And I thought, you know what, I like this. This is fun. So I thought this is a fun thing to do, and I really like to continue it. And then we had a little exercise, and I thought, this is fun. I would like to continue this. This is a fun idea. I would like to just write these fun things for the sake of writing fun things. And I was like, yeah, but we got a lot. We got a lot to do. There was an awards thing that we had saw yesterday, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and hand something into that. I've got like 7,000 words or something. first like couple of chapters, it's meant to be a work in progress, anyways, right? But I don't, and I feel that because of how I feel at times, and this is the part where the people may be right, is how I feel at times really prevents me from doing these things. It prevents me from reading. It prevents me from writing. It prevents me from getting out of bed. It prevents me from even doing simple things. Today I haven't journaled before this video. I just feel so bad. You know. Speaking of, I'll make sure it's out. But I think that in a large part, yeah, it's really difficult because there's emotions which can drive and there's emotions which can paralyze, and I think that it's really important to always be mindful of the ones that drive and always keep them at the forefront because they can come from so many deep recesses and motivations and experiences. For me personally, it's the fact that I just love writing so much that I always want to have that at my forefront. I always want to have that in my mind. But then there's those ones that paralyze, and I think that if I just take the ones that paralyze and don't acknowledge them, I I burst. Pressure, explosion. But there are times where I acknowledge those feelings too much, you know, and I think maybe in that I can also be performative, in that I can also lack a performance, and if I try to push them all down and go be hotshot, that that can stunt performance, and I feel like that's never where I get good work out because in there I never write from like a humble place. I never write from a place of excitement, from a place of, I write from a place of ego and a place of reaction, and I don't like that. I like to be a certain person. I like to be a certain me, feeling certain things. You know, and I don't really mess with the idea that somebody could come into a comment section, or somebody could understand this from a perspective of the stuff we've been going through the past couple of years on the internet. Of pushing down said feelings, of doing said things, and having certain attitudes which sort of repel the things that people feel. And I think that's largely because, or at least in the perspective I'm sitting at right now, I think that is because of the ladder description. The when you acknowledge them too much, they can paralyze you, right? I think people do have that fear of being paralyzed by their feelings because, well, you don't ever want to be paralyzed by yourself. You don't ever want to be a failure because of yourself. I don't think people are failures. I think that people can perceive themselves as failures because, well, they knew what they were capable of and they didn't do it, right? They knew they could have got out of bed that day, but they didn't get out of bed. Not that they could have run 100 miles. That's never the point, right? They could have done said thing and they didn't. Regardless of how hard it was just that they were capable. And I feel that it's a balancing act, and I don't really live inside that balancing act. And I'm young and I'm learning. I can acknowledge that. And I think it comes with a fair amount of grace. It comes with a fair amount of love, especially self-love and forgiveness, to where, like, if you really, no matter who you are, where you are, if you don't give yourself enough love, you won't do anything. Nothing that you've ever wanted to do in life. You'll always doubt yourself and you'll always think that somebody else could do it better. And I think that's the unfortunate part, because nobody could write your story better than you. It's your story, Fuck them. Fuck them, really, whoever the hell it was who thought they could. And your perception of these other people who you think are better writers, they just can't write your story. I can't write a story about Midwest America. I'm not a Midwest American. Yeah. I think it's disingenuous to do it. Especially in like a social realism context, fantasy's fantasy. But but then I think there's another level of too much love. Of thinking that you are all there is, and then you get to walk around like hot shit. And I don't think the production of your work serves any meaningful purpose, because it will then always come from a place of hot shitness. And being a hot shit is not true. Nobody has ever been hot shit. Nobody has ever been that guy, that girl, him. Nobody is. You're just one amongst billions. And sometimes you do something decent, and sometimes you do stuff bad. If an author writes something which is like, wow, you're not hot shit, lad. You just had to go through a process with so many agents and editors and workshops and processes of days of failure, of victory, of failure, of victory. That process is not hot shit. Gaining all that money from that is not hot shit. It's just being a human, right? And everybody's a human, and no one's hot shit, no one's him. In any context, in every context, no one is better than another. A man runs gold, and a guy beside him runs silver. What about that day, right? Maybe the event took place in conditions in which was easier for him. Maybe he just was genetically more gifted. Maybe his mom didn't die the week before. Maybe all these sorts of complicated things. You're not hot shit because you win something. You're not hot. It's just, I think we're always trying to reach that level of being hot shit, right? Of in your mind always reaching that sort of person you see. Well, it's not true, if we really just accepted who we are right now, when we gave ourselves that self-acceptance and that self-love, the person at 50 years old who's been doing this for 30 years, I think the only reason why he is seen in our eyes as hot shit, as like saint-like in a way, is the fact that he gets through things. And I think the way that he gets through things is by having like that humility. That's the way he gets through things, is because he wakes up every day and he accepts that he's not hot shit, but he has things he loves, and he's grateful, and he's humble. And that person is somebody who's uniquely in tune with his own self-awareness, and through that process of being self-aware and understanding how lucky someone is being self, I think they're able to fully accept what life is, what it can be, what it should be. And what life should be is not something that we determine. We, say, I want to be a writer, but it doesn't mean that I should get said publications from said publishers and do this and that and this and that. I try every day to work towards the pieces of work that I try to work towards. And you should always, it's good to have that writing list. It's good to have that list of stories and those ideas. Not that you will get to them all the time, because a process of a 200 book is going to make sure that you don't do that short story for a little while, and whatever burnout you seem to come across. It's not through the paralyzing depression, nor the prideful hot shitness of you thinking that you're writing the greatest stuff ever. It's through that middle ground that seems to be keenly aware of how bad you can be and keenly aware of how good you can be, and always trying constantly to choose one over the other. And I think trying to be too good, pride. Trying to be too bad, or just accepting the bad, letting that take over, that comes from the negative. I think that through sitting here and trying to think about it, trying to be aware of it, being keenly, being focused and being aware of yourself every single day takes a lot of effort. And I think that's why there's things like pressure that bursts. I think that's why people can get weaker, is that to actually perform said things and not be performative, it takes up so much strength, and it takes a required amount of effort, principally, that I think people face on a daily basis. You're never really physically attacked. I don't know if I've got a UFC fighter in the views here, but you're never always physically attacked, but mentally and principally you are. Should I get out of bed today? That for some people who overthink might be something way too deep. For others, it might just be get out of bed. And I think you've got to think on your own level of Principally, what are we talking about? What are things that I can sort of try to not pay too much attention to? Because if I pay too much attention to them, like said feelings, I'll be paralyzed. If I think that getting out of bed in the morning is something as grand as me, preparing myself to be good for the day, or if it's me thinking that um, I'm fighting some sort of battle, that might be too much of a thing. And for other people, doing that thing might be the thing that gets them out of bed. So it's really on a individual basis. But I think that I'm talking for myself here, and I think it's like, stop thinking too seriously all the time. Stop thinking too seriously all the time. And as I'm saying this, I'm still not like getting off of this hill. I'm still really exaggerating so many different things. But I exaggerate so many different things in so many different contexts, and I feel like it's never just like I. I really do wish to grow. I wish to become 30. I wish to become 40 and 50. To be that man that I just described, being able to sort of sit back comfortably and be with some good level of humility. Today I'm not going to be too bad. Today I'm not going to try and do too good. Today I'm just going to try and accept it on that level. Accept the try and accept one's weaknesses. My weaknesses might be that I feel these bad things far too much, and that sometimes I have the tendency to lean over to them and be on their side. And that paralyzes me, and that takes me away from any of my work. But the thing I hold so deeply is my work, so that when that occurs, I feel like I'm lost. And I don't like that fact, because I feel I hold my work so deeply, that it is a part of me. It's a part of what I am as a person. It's a part of my everyday life. And I think it's important to try to discern things, right? Because ultimately every situation's different. You could be sitting there, you could get a thought which could drag you away from your work, or you could get a thought that could distract you. And one time you could be doing something very simple and think, I gotta go do some work right now, when that's not the thing to do. You focus on other things. Like taking care of children, taking care of family, all sorts of things. But I think this situation is so like supremely complex. It's all about people's self, and maybe through Christian, through Buddhist perspectives of like the mastery of oneself. That sort of plays the important role, right? Which I think the manosphere tried to fill. Mastery of oneself through monetary gain. Well, the idea here is to just perform simply. You know, not for monetary gain, but just then again, I think that's everything that the sort of gym culture had tried to achieve. I won't even say way back. I think it's still ongoing. I think it's still currently in the process. But yeah, I think I'd say don't be performative. Perform, but without any of the negative social media connotations of the words, and very heavily an emphasis on look at who you are. Look at who you are and just be honest. Being honest doesn't need to be malicious. Being honest doesn't have to come with self-hatred or harm. Just be honest, I'm not perfect. I can never be perfect. And I can't be perfect now. Even if I were to try and give all my effort right now, I could not be perfect. But I could give all my effort. And that's really good. That would be fantastic. That would be more than enough to give myself my complete effort. How beautiful would that be? But it seldom happens. I think I'd like to accept and be keenly aware that I'm just me trying to figure things out in the day, and to not put so much pressure on myself. At the end of the day, there are so many things I can't do, and there are only so many things I can do. And inside of that, that's where I struggle. It's inside those things that I can do. When I think about the things I can't do, is where my mind explodes. So if I think about the things I can do and try to do them, which in and of itself takes great amount of strength. To pick up this book and read it, it is not an easy thing. But then again, when I mentioned before, maybe the thinking of such importance is what drags it down. It's an entirely complex thing, but I think if you just give yourself some kindness, some love, some grace, life can be a little bit easier. You don't need to always be gruff and tough. Just remember you have some things to do today, and it's best to do them than rather not. And you don't want to stay in bed all day. Don't do that to yourself. It's not a good place to be. And I think that's where I'll end this video. Be a little bit more gentle with yourself. Treat yourself how you'd want others to treat you. Treat others how you want to treat yourself. How you want them to treat yourself. Yeah. I'm gonna go now. I haven't been this gentle on myself in a while. I still don't know if it's quite right, but I think I've got an opportunity to go ask questions today. To go seek answers. And I will, actually. Today I'll intentionally try to get myself in a better place. So, you do that too, if you're struggling. But also you just wasted half an hour.